All right. Good morning, folks. Wherever you are out there, welcome. This is the Charge Life Podcast. I'm Joseph Barletta, and this is where we discuss EVs and all things EV charging. So glad you could pull over and park with us today. So let's get plugged in. Today's episode is all about what happened to the Rivian Adventure Charging Network. I have special guest speaker James Hike joining us with us today. He's an avid. He's actually out on the road today. So I think you guys are really going to love this one. So again, before we begin today's episode, it's brought to you by Smart Charge America. Since 2007, Smart Charge America has installed tens of thousands of EV charging stations nationwide, and they can do the same for you today, whether in the home, commercial, service. Just look up their website, smartchargeamerica.com today to get started. After all, if you can't charge, you can't drive. All right, so today's topic, what happened to the Rivian Adventure Charging Network? James, I think you own a Tesla, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so you may not know much about the Rivian Charging Network, but back in 2020, 2021, the CEO, announced that they were going to do about 6,000 of these charging station sites, all over the U.S. And it was going to be great, and they were going to complement the off-roading experience that the Rivian, buyers actually seek. These adventure buyers, they seek, and so as a result, the effort has been a little bit lackluster. I think Rivian's main focus should be on production and scaling that production out for their R1Ts and R1Ss. I think they have a very, very, very compelling product, but that product has been losing revenue or profit. It hasn't been hitting profits the way that they needed to, and so that's one of their main focus. So it's kind of hard to start this network over here when you haven't really hit profitability out on your actual product. So. But overall, I mean, I don't think that a lot of people know that the Rivian Adventure Network is proprietary to Rivian customers only. You can't be a non-Rivian customer and use the charging network. So they do use the CCS cable connection for their DC fast charging for their Adventure Network, but unfortunately, it is proprietary. So much like the Tesla, like your Tesla supercharging network, that's what it's like. So
yeah, they followed that model. They're just lagging behind.
They did. Now. Yeah, they did.
But I mean, in comparison to Tesla, how many superchargers did Tesla have at that point in the Tesla business model, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tesla to compare, it would be dishonorable to really compare the Rivian Adventure Charging Network to the Supercharging Network. I mean, Tesla's got about 10 years of experience on them, and Tesla at an early stage, they were able to introduce, at a higher price point, which allowed them to really take that and put it into the network, even though they were not profitable up until I would say somewhere around 2018, 2019 on the debut of their Model 3. They still had the ability to continuously innovate and put these supercharging sites out there. They knew the future. They knew what was ahead of the monumental task that they actually had to accomplish. And so they built that into the pricing model. And I don't necessarily, I can't account for Rivian. I can't speak for Rivian, but I don't know if necessarily they've priced enough of this business model into the pricing of their vehicles, so that, like I said, they really need to focus on hitting that profitability. So yeah, that's one of the other key things. And the good thing is they have made improvements to the charging network. I mean, the Adventure Charging Network, they have basically upgraded the communications authentication protocol on the back end to be ISO 15118.2, which is the new plug-in charge standard. So now it operates much like the supercharging network, which is really exciting. If you're a Rivian owner, you just go to it, you plug in, boom, it starts charging. There's nothing you have to do with regards to swiping an RFID card or going to the app and engaging. You just plug and play. That's really valuable. So a lot of the Rivian customers, they really love that about the actual network itself. That's one of the things they do rant and rave about. So, and one of the other things is, you mentioned some of the supercharging sites that you've visited and how they've been expanding. And if you really look at the Rivian charging network, the Adventure network itself, their layout and design is they're only averaging about 6 dispensers per site. They do try to offer a tow-friendly dispenser or a parking arrangement in a majority of their sites. So I know that's valuable. I know a lot of people kind of they were hating. I don't want to say you hate on Tesla, but a lot of people wanted Tesla to try to put more tow-friendly stalls in their supercharging site setups. And sometimes the density of the area that Teslas are compact in, their job is to be able to get as many ports out there as possible to help their customers. On the advent, the 1% of the time, tow, if they can, they will. But a majority of the time, since they're more densely populated areas, they're really trying to they're just not able to really complement that like Rivian has. And that's really important because a lot of the adventure people, it's a truck, right? It's an SUV. You're most likely going to be towing stuff if you're going out on an adventure, campsite, that sort of thing. So.
What, man, in my Tesla in rural areas, mountainous, landscapes and things of that nature. But that's, I think, the benefit, man. I mean, Tesla should consider that, but Rivian for doing it. So
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to do. And sometimes you got to take up like 2 parking spaces to complement that tow friendly package there. And that could be, based on your host agreement, your site host agreement and stuff like that. These parking spaces, they cost money, and so when you're doing that, it does take a little bit more out of that system site and design. Not all sites are friendly to that, but Rivian, I really like the fact that they've made it a point of like contention, like we're going to try to put these in as many stalls as possible, and that's really good. But if you look at the overall cost per site, I mean, you're looking at somewhere around, from what we see from the charging stations and the equipment and the dispensers and the cabinetry and the transformers, we're looking at somewhere between $1 million and $1.2 million per site on what we're seeing on average from them. So not terribly too bad, not as cheap as Tesla, but again, I really want to try not to compare this network to Tesla, even though I will throughout it's just everyone's so familiar, including yourself, with the Tesla supercharging network, but you've probably never even seen a Rivian charging network, adventure network, site set up before. And so by having those subtle comparisons, it'll help you be a little bit more familiar when you do approach those sites. You're like, oh yeah, I know how these things work. So.
Well, I mean, you have to compare, Joseph. I mean,
I guess you do. I guess you do. As far as comparison
you would be doing them injustice if you didn't compare and clearly trying to develop a network very similar to what Tesla has created, from the structure of the car, to the charge itself, to the charging experience as well. And they're probably pass it with some of the technology.
Yeah, I mean,
into it, which is why it's probably so expensive.
That's right. And it's just not as prevalent. We thought by this time we would see, maybe a few hundred of these chargers out there, maybe 1,000 or 2. Not the case. You're in, I think they're less than 100 stations all in total across the country, and so it's a slower ramp up. And I think they're seeing that, this is really hard to do. But overall, I mean, if you look at the actual output go ahead.
It's got to be hurting their sales, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, to and from, it just depends on like where their customer segment is. I mean, probably a little bit higher income. They probably have a house, and so maybe a majority, 98% plus of their charging is done at home. And that particular buyer is more style, sense, comfort, luxury type stuff. Maybe they're not as much as the outdoor, rugged, adventurous, nomad, type of explorer that there is. But you yourself, you do camping a lot, right? You do camping a lot with your Tesla. Is that correct? I'm
speaking from experience, because like I've looked at it, and because the charge network hadn't been scaled very well, I'm not buying one. Not for 90 grand.
Gotcha. So I guess you would say that is a handcuff,
And I mean, that's an expensive car that I can't really use at the capacity that I would use it, which would be, driving in the mountains, camping out, things of that nature. I like to travel on the road. Right. I like Tesla. I can charger hop.
I remember Rivian. Rivian was one of the first that jumped on board using the Tesla NAC standard as soon as Tesla, opened that up. And so that was a really good strategic move on Rivian. They really jumped on that fast. And I think they anticipated that, and that's why they jumped on it fast. So it's only a matter of time before they actually have access to use these supercharging sites, which will be available, if I'm not mistaken, in 2024. And the vehicles themselves should be having the charging inlet in production by 2025 inside the Rivians to basically use the Tesla supercharging network, the Tesla NAC standard. So that's good. So now let me ask you, if you had the Rivian, even though it's 90,000 or whatever you said, and it had right now, and if it had the Tesla NAC standard, and you would be able to not only use the Rivian charging network, but also the Tesla supercharging network, would that change your decision on purchasing?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice car, man. There's a lot of awesome software features. So yeah, it's fast. I think the range is a little lackluster. I mean, for the size car and as heavy as it is, I mean, it needs more range. But otherwise, no, cool car, man. Cool truck. The SUV.
Yeah, I mean, SUV is beautiful. SUV is definitely catching a lot of grip. It's catching a lot of momentum, which we're really excited to see. But I think I would only do the truck. If you're gonna buy a truck, buy a truck. But getting back to the chargers themselves, the Rivian Charging Adventure Network, the output on these chargers is really. I mean, they have a 300 kilowatt output on each one of these chargers. But the interesting thing is, we've only seen records of Rivians only being able to get really 200 to 220. So I think there's a little bit of conservatism inside that output. I'm hoping that Rivian has a chance to do more, but we're no, look, okay, supercharging network, Tesla. You plug in, let's say you're at 10%, you're going to get 250 kW. That bad boy says 1,000 miles of range per hour, and it's coming fast, right? Now, it may not last long, but you're still getting that 250 kW. Until you've hit a certain I guess charging curve, and then you start going down. So the idea is that, like, Rivian, if they have the ability to kind of kick it up a notch and meet Tesla at that 250, let's do it. So to all the Rivian engineers out there, let's kick it up a notch. Let's get to that 250. But the interesting thing is, by the time you actually get to the 250, you look at what Tesla's already doing with their version 4 supercharger network that they're rolling out. 350 kW output, really amazing stuff. But overall, we're going to focus on Rivian Adventure Charging Network. Some really good stats that I'll tell you. They do have a similar size cable as this Tesla supercharger. If not, it's a little bit bigger. We're estimating somewhere around 6 to 7 feet on that, but it is a 500 amp continuous load liquid cooled cable. So we're thinking we measured it, and it just depends on if you want to just do the cable or the cable and the connector, like total length. We're getting around 6 feet on that end. So the cable is very robust, and I believe some of their newer ones, they're using the Gen 2 CCS cable connector, which is it's just a lot more robust, a lot less prone to overheating, so forth and so on. And I believe it's a little bit lighter than the older one, which now the cable is heavier, but the connector is lighter. So go figure. That is the case. Pricing wise, I think they're free. If you recall, Tesla's superchargers used to be free before they actually started charging for that. And so I believe the Rivian Adventure Network is free for now. Now they could change, that could change, and they could charge you over time for that. But it would, that's a pretty valuable consideration. I mean, when you do use the supercharging network, you're charged a little bit, $14 here, maybe $20 here. But if you're in the same light and you're using the Adventure Network and it's free, how would you feel about that?
They'll probably pull the same, situation as Tesla, where you have free charging up until 2018, 17, or whatever it is. Or
gotcha. So
whatever's comparable,
yeah, free charger for a year or something like that, so.
Right. Or if you have a model prior to this year, you can charge free on the network.
It'd be interesting. Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that and see exactly how they plan on changing some of that strategic pricing and some of those decisions. But overall, if you look at the actual cabinet electronics, this is one of the things that I wanted to kind of describe to you, so I don't really lose you a little bit. But when you look at the cabinetry, each cabinet's about 750 amps, and that's about 300 kW on the cabinets. And so the way Rivian Charging Network generally is designed is each cabinet is connected to 3 dispensers. Okay, so if I have a cabinet that has 300 kW output and one Rivian plugs into one of those 3, they're going to get the full max load. What you're thinking is, excuse me, it could be 300, but it's actually like 200, 220, like we talked about. That was the max we've ever actually seen. But let's say a second Rivian plugs in. Now it's splitting that capacity to 150 and 150. And then let's say a third Rivian plugs in, and you got all 3 Rivians charging at the same state of charge on that, out of that power cabinet. You're going to be at 100 kW on each one of those cabinets. So each cabinetry does a kind of a load share, but unfortunately, if this cabinet goes down, those 3 stalls go down, and the other cabinet doesn't kick in like Tesla's supercharging network. Tesla's cabinets will kick in and help support the other ones as they limp along and utilize that until they're able to get somebody out there to replace the cabinet. Rivian's adventure charging network actually doesn't have the ability to do that. So that's one of the downfalls. And we're hoping that as they progress and get better at the supercharging at these Rivian adventure charging sites, and they put a little bit more modern electronics and a little bit more modern power distribution inside, that they'll be able to really take advantage of some of the stuff that Tesla has done. Maybe they can do the same, and that will harness them for being able to actually put out more stalls per site, as opposed to just being limited to like an average of 6. Yeah, I mean, what's the average Tesla supercharging site stall? I mean, you talked about you just went to one in your neighborhood that just expanded, right? I mean, on average they were like 8, and now they're like 16 on average.
This one's got over 30. I'm actually at one right now. It's got over 30.
Okay.
It's got over 30 stalls.
That's and you could do that because of the power distribution and the power electronics at the site level that Tesla has, and they've basically kind of it's like a symphony. It really is. It's beautiful. It's harmonious all the way through and through. But that's the difference between how the Rivian charging network works and the Tesla supercharging network works. So although they do the same, load share, that sort of thing, there's kind of a fault in its stars on the Rivian adventure charging network. And I really want to talk to their engineers if I have a chance to really kind of learn from Tesla. Let's incorporate those power electronics in there, and let's maximize the site power level distribution to where if that 1000 kVA transformer is pulling in 1000 kW, let's use 1000 kW. Don't just use 600 kW. Let's use 100% of that power load that's available to us, and let's distribute as much of that to our cars as possible. And I think that was Tesla's philosophy, and that also needs to be Rivian's philosophy when it comes to this adventure charging network. But by all means, the product that they have right now, it is a very good product, and the experiences from Rivian drivers have been aces. Thumbs up all the way across the board. They love it. They don't really geek out on the stuff on the back end, but we see some of the stuff that they can make improvements, and by all means, Rivian will need to make those improvements in order to get to that second generation, output that they really need to get to for their customers. So look, joining supercharging network Tesla. When Rivian announced that, I knew right off the bat, like the 6,000 chargers out across the nation, that was going to slow down. I was like, Tesla, them announcing that they're going to join Tesla's supercharging network basically allowed them to jump on that bandwagon and really kind of focus a little bit more on having the Rivian adventure charging network out in the wild, out where you go camping, out, in the wildlife parks and stuff like that. The problem with the adventure network is Rivian, they knew that they couldn't necessarily install those just yet. They needed to start development of the Rivian adventure network kind of out and around where people are most likely available, where their customers are buying the cars, where they're able to really kind of piggyback on the top off model when it comes to their vehicles and their complementary charging offerings that they're offering to their customers. So if you really look at them jumping on board this Tesla supercharging network slowed things down for them, but I love it because it allows them to refocus where they're actually going to be focused on putting that adventure network out in those wildlife parks, recreation areas, that sort of thing. So if you really look at that, I'm thankful for it, but Rivian does know, and everyone needs to know, when you're looking at putting chargers, especially supercharging sites, out in the more rural areas where power is not as available, it's not as readily available.
Well, the biggest is Wi-Fi.
Oh, it's huge. It's a communication, right? It's all of that. How does it? So it takes longer. It costs more. It's more difficult to put in, and it's probably going to be utilized substantially less than some of the other Rivian adventure charging network sites across the country. And so overall, if Rivian does seem that they're going to be able to generate some sort of revenue coming out of these stations, they're going to look for that utilization factor to really, kind of look into increasing their return on investment. So I just want to, I mean, I know you knew this stuff about the Rivian charging network, but maybe not as much. What's your overall opinion now? Would you feel more comfortable with, purchasing that Rivian if, let's say, the Rivian charging network was just as readily available as a Tesla supercharging network?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I like I said earlier, I mean, I like the idea of them going into a niche area of the country or part, of the continent,
right?
That's hard to get to, right? It's hard to find a place to charge. So yeah, no, absolutely. Especially with Tesla's network. I mean, I know how gigantic it is. Yeah, I think it'd be crazy for them they had that opportunity to not join the NACS, right?
That's right.
Crazy. I mean, they'd be out of business if they don't. I think that was probably the direction they were headed. So
yeah, you mentioned something earlier when we were discussing offline. You said something about like, will a Tesla be able to charge on a Rivian network once they? Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think I think maybe as of 2024, when Tesla does the API integration, I think that they'll probably ask for some complimentary stuff, or hey, look, you'll allow my Teslas to go out on your, with maybe the adoption of an adapter, I guess, until Rivian charging network is basically able to switch out those cables like we talked about with a NACS cable, and that makes it a little bit more easier for you to just drive in and plug in, not have to worry about adapters. But I do see that available. I do see that they work with Tesla on that end and allow them to, maybe even discount some stuff, or maybe charge. I'm pretty sure Tesla customers that are out there charging, in the wilderness, out in campsites. I mean, I think they'd be more than grateful to charge, or to be charged for a charge.
I think it would be
to make money. So
or things that Tesla's not doing. And so why not?
That's right. It'll complement one another. That's right.
Cross promote.
That's right. So there should be some synergies there.
I would think
it'll be interesting. I'll keep my eye out on that space. So
sphere of influence.
Nice. Well, look, now you should have at least a better grasp on exactly what happened to the Rivian Adventure Network and kind of where it's going, what we've seen happen. But it's a tall tale, basically, where you see what happens when a company puts their name on something. They put their name on their product, and they've become fully integrated in that. Their charging setup is more robust. It's more reliable. 98% plus uptime on it. They're fully integrated. It just offers their customer base an amazing experience. And that's when you're a Rivian owner and you're kind of near an Adventure Network charging site, you're ecstatic. I mean, it is absolutely 100% complimentary. So you're doing your stuff at home, and then of course when you need to go, you maybe lily pad to maybe one or two of those stations, and you're good. Problem is, there's just not enough of them, and they haven't been able to do it fast enough. But in due time, you're going to see these networks interchange with the supercharging network, and that's really going to amount to Rivian's overall growth. If they continue to focus on their production, drive that cost down, and start getting profitable on their stuff, they're doing this networking stuff on the charging stuff on the back end. And so by the time that those vehicles are actually really able to be profit driven, then they're going to have this beautiful network out there, in addition to the complementary Adventure Network that hopefully Teslas will be able to use, in addition to Rivian's. And we'll kind of see what happens there. That's really exciting, just to see that future and how it unfolds.
Yeah, if Tesla drivers can't use it, I think it would be bad PR for Rivian.
Scratch my back, and I'm not scratching yours.
Yeah. Rivian, if you're listening, a Tesla better be able to plug in.
That's a really good question. Speaking of listening, look, I wanted to thank all of our listeners and subscribers for their time today. We can't do this episode without you. I know we're all better for it. James, I'm better for it. I know you're better for it. Go ahead and click on the thumbs up icon. What's up?
Every time I talk to you, I feel smarter.
Thanks, bud. Well, go ahead and click on that thumbs up icon if you can below. Share, comment, subscribe to our channel if you think we earned it. And thanks again for charging up with us today. Look, keep in mind, you can always find us at smartchargeamerica.com. And remember, folks, if you can't charge, you can't drive. We'll see you next time. Cheers.